wherein we will make a project. So I want to revise, but at the same time, I also want us to be able to put everything together, right? So for that, what we will do is we'll make a project, right? So that's coming up next week. Okay. Now, the agenda for today that we are focusing on is to understand how to create the other endpoints. So if you remember in the previous one, in the last session, we created a get route, right? So we were able to get some data from our database as a response. So today we'll talk more about databases. We'll talk a little more about updation, deletion, right? So all of those things. So again, what I'm going to do is I will start from scratch in terms of the code. So I'm not going to show you how to make the Django project again that we have already done 2-3 times, but I will start with a blank project and then I will go ahead and write the code. So we'll quickly repeat what we've covered in the previous one, and we'll basically then move to the next one as well. Okay. So I'm going to now share my screen again, and let me just share the entire screen this time. So yes, so I have VS Code open right here, and I'm going to continue from the previous project, but I have deleted all the code that we have written, right? So what I have done is I have removed everything in the URLs file, in the views file, in the models file, serializers file. So everything that we had written in the previous session in terms of the code, I have basically just removed it all, and we will rewrite it from scratch. Okay. And the agenda that we have, for the session today is to be able to create 4 API endpoints. And we should be able to create 4 API endpoints. The first route is going to be a get route where we can get something from the database. Then we are going to have a post route where we are going to send something. So the user can send some data and a corresponding action will be taken. Then we'll have either a put or a patch route. So any one of the two for updation. Okay, we'll mostly make a put route, put or patch for updation, and then we'll make a delete route. Okay, so that's delete. This is our agenda for today's session. We should be able to create these 4 API endpoints, right? So we call them API endpoints. So what this means is these are the URLs that the user can connect to get the corresponding action done. So when the user wants to read something from the application, they go for the get route. When the user wants to send something to the application, like they send their username, password, they might send a new node to be created, whatever. So all that happens in the post route. Then for updation, we have put patch. And again, for deleting something, we have delete. So this is our setup. This is what we are going to try to build, right? Now, before we do any of this, right, the first thing that we have to do is, can you let me know in the chat, what is the first step that we have to do in this case? So remember, I told you that we follow the MVC architecture. So what is the first thing that we have to create in that MVC architecture? The get and post routes are not the same, Manu. Get is for receiving data, like from a user perspective. Get is to get data and post is to send data. So that's sending and receiving. They are two different routes. Get is for receiving, post is for sending. Uh, we should do a project on your own to submit. No. So Soumya, for now, the assessments that you're getting at the end of every week are the submissions that you need to make, nothing else for now, right? So yeah, project will be building together, but you have to, for now, just focus on the assessments that you get. So you must have received 3 assessments already. You'll be receiving a fourth one today, right? This week, basically. So today or tomorrow, you should receive the assessment for this week. Yes, we have to create a model. Perfect. So let's quickly do that. For that, I'm going to go to the models.py file, right? And over here, we are going to quickly create our model. So for this, we already had installed a package, if you remember, UUID. So if you want to install it now, you can just run pip install UUID, right? Pip install or Python 3, install UUID. So you can just run that in the terminal to import this extra package. the extra package. Then the second thing that we need is the models class. So models, and then we can create our own model. So we'll continue with the same setup that we had the last time, which is going to be a note application. So we'll try to create a CRUD note, right? Create, read, update, delete, all for the notes. So models dot model, okay. And then I'll quickly specify the other parameters. So if you remember, we need to have an ID, and this can be created with the help of models dot UUID field. And here we can specify a couple of constraints. So yes, it is going to be a primary key. Okay, that's true. Then we need the default value. So that can be UUID dot UUID 4. Okay, this is a good enough option. And then editable equal to false. We want this to be a one-time setup, which means that once the key gets created, once the ID gets created, it should never be editable. That's why we have written editable equal to false. Great. Then we can have the title. So this is again simple. We have character field. We can specify max length. And if we want it to be unique, we can specify unique to. So remember yesterday also, when we made the unique field and we try to create the same note again, it gives an error, right? So we have to, that's how unique works. Then we can have the content of the, so this can text. We can just let it be. We don't need the content to be unique, and we don't want to give a maximum length to the content as well. Then we can have a status. This can be a Boolean field. Okay, so this can be a true false value. And then again, if you want to give a default, you can give a default like this. So default equal to false. We can say, so by default, every note will be false status, which is not complete in our case. So we'll say that true is completed, false is not complete, right? Then we can have created at and updated at. These are going to be date time fields, and we'll take it from the current time. So auto now add equal to true. This is the first one. And then we'll similarly change it to updated at. So this is all the data that we need for each note. Okay, this is everything that we need for a single note. Now, whatever we do, like whatever data we send to the user, add to the get from the user, whatever it is, it will only be this much, right? So effectively, what happens is once we run this server, once we go ahead and run the server, then a new table is going to be created in the database with the name notes. That's what we are specifying in this meta class, right? These are additional details about the table. And then we can specify the ordering as well. So it can be ordered by created at. This is optional. You can skip it if you want to. That's not a compulsion. And then we can have a str, and it should return the node.title. That's it. So this is our model that we have created. Okay. And yes, I just need a minute. I moved the files around. So since I was uploading on GitHub, just a second, I just have to move the local environment in the same folder. Just give me a minute. Okay, and we are back. So hopefully now the errors should be gone. Okay, and yes, so I am just going to go ahead and continue working on this. So you can see it is saying, it is not able to resolve, etc., etc. So I guess once we activate our environment, it should be able to do that. So I'm just going to activate it. So I'm just looking for the source command for activation. There you go. Okay, good. This is active, so that means everything is good now. I can see the name here. Done. Okay, now we can cd into the project. So that's my cd notes. Okay, and then we can say manage.py. So that's going to be Python 3 manage.py and then run server. And it should be able to start a server. Okay, for us. And yes, so the files and folders are missing, which is fine, but there are no errors in that. Done. So this is our model, right? So like I was saying, what will happen is once we create this model and we make migrations, right? a table with this name will get created. Okay, so DB table equal to notes. So in our database, a table with the name notes is going to be created. And this is how SQL databases work, right? So SQL again stands for structured query language. The term SQL is a short form or an acronym for structured query language. So what happens is whenever we create any database, it is going to contain a few tables. It's going to be a collection of tables, right? Just like we make a normal Google sheet, Excel sheet, in the similar way, the data that we store in our SQL is going to be stored in a tabular format, right? So it's very simple. It just, it's a table, something like this. The table can, of course, then contain rows and columns. So in the columns, we have the data items that we have just specified, right? So for example, this ID, this will become one column. Title will become the second column, right? Then maybe the content, of course, content will then become the third column, and so on and so on. So however many columns we have specified, or whatever we have specified in this class, these many columns will get created. And then every note will be added as a record, or every note will be added as a row. So let us say that we add note with ID1, ID2, ID3. So these are going to be the rows, the actual data which we are adding or storing. Okay, so that's how our DB or a database is going to be structured. It's a tabular structure where columns indicate the type and other features of the data, like what type of data it is. For example, is it a in ID field, character field, text field, Boolean field, whatever it is, and also the additional properties like the maximum length, default value, unique. All of these are characteristics of the column, okay, of the columns rather. And then each data which corresponds to that column should follow that pattern. So for example, if we are inserting a title, it cannot be more than 200, otherwise it will give an error, right? So if you try to insert a title which contains more than 200 characters, then it will throw an error and it will not take that input. So that's the kind of constraint that we have to specify over here. Okay, so this is the model. We have now created our first model. That's going to be the note model. And we only need one for now, but a project can have more, right? An app, if you want, can have more than one model. You can just create the next model under here. In the same file, models.py, we can create as many models as we want. All right, so this is done. Okay, any questions still here? Just say no, understood, clear, whatever, so that I know that there are no questions till this point. So the default database is SQL, not MySQL. It is actually just SQLite. If you see here, SQLite 3, that's the default database that we have. But again, most of the commands that work. So actually the default database, is going to be the free open source version, which is MySQL. But again, 99% of the commands are same. So in SQL, no, the database is going to be MySQL only, the open free version of SQL, not Oracle. Oracle is paid. Right? Oracle requires additional subscription. So this is the free version, which is MySQL. But yes, so basically the idea is that most of the commands that we write in all versions of SQL, no matter what it is almost the same. 95% of all the commands are the same. There are just a few syntax differences in one or two versions of SQL, but otherwise everything else is the same, right? Great. So this is our model. Now again, to create the model, we are basically creating a class which is inheriting the model class, which is available in Django. And we are specifying different fields, different columns that we want in our table. Once this is done, we are then specifying some additional characteristics like the name of the table, then which column should be used for ordering data while returning it, etc., etc. So all of that is being specified. Okay, so this is done. Now, the next thing that we have to do is, so Akash, we don't really have to write the create query because that's how it works. So when we run make migrations, it's going to automatically create the table and create the columns for us. So we don't have to really write the query ourselves. That's the whole point of this integration. Okay, great. Now the next step is to serialize the data like we have already seen, but let me quickly just repeat that once again as well. So for serializer, another package called REST framework, or we had installed another package called REST framework. So we will, from REST framework, we want to import something called serializers. Okay, I will just open this again. Just give me a minute. Not sure why it's not giving me the auto suggestions. Yes, Gautami, we will get to the Thunder client in a minute. So let me just finish off the code first. Then when we go to Thunder client, I will repeat it. Okay, we should be good now. So now it should give us auto suggestions. So again, in case you also face similar issues where auto suggest is not working, just close the folder, open it again, and we are good. Great. Then from our models, we have to import the model. That's the only thing that we have. And then we can create a serializer. So if you remember, the purpose of serializer is to allow the data to go to be to and from JSON. So our Python data gets converted to JSON data when we are sending it as a response. And when the user sends something in the post, put, whatever, the user is then going to send data in the JSON format. So we should be able to understand that JSON data, right? So JSON to Python for incoming data and Python object to JSON for outgoing data. That's what serializer will do. It's going to take care of the conversion of data to and fro JSON, to and from JSON, right? Great. Then here we specify what are the different fields that we want. So which model are we dealing with? Well, we are dealing with the note model. And then what are the different fields? Well, we want to convert all fields, or we want to basically uh, specify it like this. Okay, so this is now going to take care of the entire serialization for us, where all fields are going to be serialized. So remember, this is double underscore, not single. So double underscore and double underscore. It's not very visible. That's why I'm telling you it's two underscores, not a single, but two. Okay, done. So this is our serializer. That's pretty much it. We just have to specify which model to follow and which fields to be need to be converted. Okay, perfect. Now model is done, serializer is done. The next step is to go ahead and create a view. So now let's work on this. So for this, we need a couple of things. First thing that we need is the response. So we can say from REST framework dot response, we want to import the response object. This is how we will send the response to the user. Then from REST framework, we need to import status and generics, these two things, and then the note model. So from dot models, we have to import note model and then the serializer. So from dot serializers, we will import the note serializer and we should be good. Now we can go ahead and create our view. So this will be another class. Okay, so let's make a class. Let's call it note view, for example. So again, keeping it very simple. Okay, so class note view, then generics dot generic API view. Okay, then we can specify the serializer class that's going to be the note serializer. And then what are we going to work with? So note model dot objects dot all. Now this is really important here, where when we say query set, what we are basically saying is we want to work with the entire database. Okay, if you are working with a specific table, for example, let us say that you're working only with one part of the table, like all orders that have come today, or only all orders in the past week, something like that. So then you can write those constraints over here. Right here, what we are saying is take everything available in the notes table. How do we know it's the notes table? Well, in the note model, we have specified the table name, right? So basically here, what we are saying is that the data that we are dealing with is everything available in the notes table. That's what this line means. And then we are saying that it is going to be serialized based on the serializer, which is it is going to take the note model and serialize all fields. So these two things are to be specified at the beginning. Then we can create all the different HTTP methods that we have. So can you quickly put in the chat what were the 5 HTTP methods I told you about yesterday in the previous session, that is. There were 5 HTTP methods that I told you, right? I just told you in the beginning of the session also. Can you list them in the chat? Okay, post, get, put, delete and patch. Perfect. So yes, we have 5 methods. The first is get. Okay. So this is the get method. Then we can have find post method, right? So this is the second one. Then this is the post method. And just like this, we can also have put, patch, and delete, right? So let's go for patch. So self, and I will show you one more thing, but for now, I'm just typing it here. So get, post, patch, and delete. Okay, so again, these are the few methods that we'll be writing. Okay, let's start with the first one, and one by one, we'll go to the others. Great. Now let us start with the get method. And what we want over here is we basically want to go ahead and we want to send all nodes. We want to return all nodes to the user. Okay. So for this, what we can do is first we can fetch all nodes in 3 steps. We want to return all nodes to the user. Step 1, get everything from the database. Step 3, send it. Okay. 3 simple steps. So we'll say nodes equal to node model dot objects dot all. We can also say nodes equal to query set if you want, right? So this is also going to be fine, but again, it's a class setup. So the methods might not have access to the data. So we can specify like this. Then we can say serializer. So again, step 1 is done. We have read all the nodes. Then we have to serialize them. So we can say self dot serialize class. And what class do we have? We have the nodes class, like we have specified here, node serializer. And then we can say many equal to true. So if there are more than one items to be serialized, we can specify this. So yes, we have multiple nodes, right? It could be that there are 100,000 nodes, who knows, however many nodes could be there. Then finally, we have to return the response. So we can say return response. And then we can go ahead and we can write whatever we want to send. So we just want the serializer's data to go back. That's it. So this is our get route. Okay. So again, what we have done so far is we have created 3 things. We have created a model, we have created a serializer, and based on those 2 things, we have created a view. Now, the final step, which is to connect this view to the user or to get like give user the access to this view, we can go ahead and edit our URLs. Right? We can edit our URLs. So what do we do for this URLs file? Well, we specify which route or what will the user enter, which path the user needs to enter in order to access this data. So we can say from Django.urls import path. Then from views, we have to import the note view. Okay. And then we can go ahead and specify the URL patterns. So the spelling is really important. Okay. It's really important. If you miss anything, if you misspell this, there will be an error. Right? Python or Django rather is very strict with this. So now we want all nodes to be available directly on the home route. So here we can say note view dot as view. So this is it. This is the first part that we are specifying. Finally, what we have to do is we have to now specify this on the system level URLs or on the project level URLs. Right now, we have specified this in the app level file. So in the similar way, we have to also specify this in the project level. So here we can again do the same import. So from Django.urls, URLs import, we need 2 things, path just like before and include. Now here again, we need the URL patterns is equal to, and then we can specify the path. So this is going to be API slash nodes. Okay. And then what do we want to include after this? Well, after this, we want to include the path available in my nodes dot URLs, right? I hope the voice is clear because I have YouTube running on the side and I can hear it fine. So let me know if you guys are having issues with the voice. I can try to maybe change the setup, but I've been using the same setup for the past I don't know, 10 sessions and everything is good. So I don't think there should be a problem with the voice. Done. Okay, great. So this is it. Now this pattern is really important to understand, right? What I'll do is I'll quickly tell you how this is working. So this is our system level URL, and these are our individual app level URLs, right? So in this case, we have a single app called My Notes, and then this entire project is called Notes. Okay. Now what is happening is over here, we are specifying the first path. So we are saying that whenever the user goes to API/notes, okay, we want to take the user to this notes app. This is our notes app, for example. Right? Similarly, we might have other apps, let's say second app, third app, etc. So when we go to this URL, we are taken to the notes file, which is what we have specified earlier, right? Now within this, we can then specify all the other sub things that we want, like get, post, whatever. I'll give you an example of this later again. But again, so this is how the structure is. Then again, we can have another thing, let's say shared. So this is another app where we can have probably shared notes, right? So that control will then go this control, if the user goes to this route, for example, www.website.com/API/notes, that will take them here. Similarly, if they go to /API/shared, that goes here, right? So this is what we are specifying at the project level. We are saying that when you go to the notes, you have to basically open the urls.py, right? And then what do we want to include here? We want to include the URL after this, like whatever is available in this file, we want to add after slash. And right now we don't have anything over there, right? If you just check that URL file, we don't have anything. But here, if we write /all notes, okay, then what will happen is then the path will become /API/notes/all notes. So whatever path we specify here, this will be included to the existing path, right? At the system level. Okay, that is the setup. Okay, that's going to be our setup. So yes, that's how it is going to be. All right. So that's effectively what we have written over here. Perfect. Now I will remove this and we can now go ahead and try to run this. So first step, again, let's open the terminal. The first step in the terminal is to make migrations, right? So for that, we have Python 3 manage.py make migrations. This will first have to cd into the project. So cd notes and then make migration. So this is going to tell us what changed. Right? So it says alter field status. I think yesterday we called it template. We called it something else. I think it was content or a category or something like that. So it is telling us that it is running this alter command. So when we run migrate, it should then go ahead and change that. You can see it is changed the node model status. So okay. And then we can go ahead and we can start our server. So that's going to be manage.py run server. Now, as soon as we run this server, it should be accessible to us in Thunder Client. This is going to be the tool that we use to test our API calls, right? So now if I go ahead and run this, you can see we get all the nodes from yesterday as a response, right? So yesterday when we created this project, we added 3 nodes and they're all permanently stored in my database because it's a database. It's not a temporary storage anymore, right? So these are coming from the database and you can see that the order of response is going to be based on the created at timestamp. So whichever node will be created first or whatever, in that order it will show up. So I think it's reverse because it says 1258 first and then 17, that's 13.7 and then 112. So it's maintaining that creation order in the response. That's what we specify when we write that ordering in the model here. When we write this, right, ordering created at. So this is what we are specifying. How should the response be sorted? Which column should be used to sort it? You will not be able to get this output in the browser. So if you are wondering why this will not work on the browser or whatever. It will not work on the browser, any browser. Right? So if I just go ahead and I paste it, you can see it will say template does not exist. Okay. So the reason for this is because we are not returning any HTML. We are not returning any visual content on the screen, right? All we are, you can see it is expecting some HTML, but we are returning JSON data. And that is why it is not working just yet. When we make the project, then I'll tell you how to make a template which can be returned. Okay. But for now, we are not running or not returning any HTML. So nothing is going to show up in the browser. That is why we have to use Thunder Client, right? And the way Thunder Client works is very simple. You just have to open it, create a new request. So something like this opens up. It is like a normal code file. And then you can just specify whichever HTTP method you have, your URL, and run it. If you want to send something, you go to the body and you type your content in here in the JSON content field. You can just type it in and you can just send it. Okay. So this is how Thunder Client is going to work. Right. So I'm going to close it off for now. And that's the first thing. I am not sure if Thunder Client is available in PyCharm. You can just check or maybe install it separately if it has a separate installer, or then install this other tool called Postman. So Postman is also going to allow us to do this, right? Postman requires a registration though, so you'll have to sign up. It's a free tool, but it requires a sign up. So you can check that out and yeah, work with it that way, right? Great. Now, coming back to what we were doing. So we have created one view right now, which is the get view. So in a similar way, now let us create our second view, which is going to be our post view. So in the post, again, I will stop the server here because after every save, it's going to run. So, it makes sense to just stop the server here. Yes. So now in the post, again, we have to follow the same three steps. Okay. Step one, we have to um, read data from the user. Whatever the user is giving us, we have to read that, right? Then step two, we have to serialize that data. And then step three, we have to um, save it in the database. So it's the exact opposite. First, read from the user. Second, serialize it. And then third is to save it in the database. If everything is good, if it gets serialized, then that means that all the formatting, all the constraints are met. And then we can go ahead and save it. Okay. So yes, now let us go ahead and try to do this. So step one, we have to basically read the data and serialize it. We can do it in a single step. So we can say serializer is equal to self dot serializer class. And then we can specify the data is equal to request dot data. So we have access to two things here, right? Self and request. Self, as you might know, when you discuss the OOP setup, it refers to its own data types and methods. Data and methods. But request is what is coming from the URL, coming from the user, right? So remember in Thunder Client, I told you, if you want to send a post request, we can put something in the body, right? So this is what we are referring to. When we say request.data, we are referring to data coming in the request as a JSON format. Okay, so we're going to serialize it like this. Then we can check if the serializer is valid. Okay, so it works like this. And if it is valid, then it gives us a true result. A valid serializer would mean that all the constraints, all the data types, all the column properties are a match, which means everything is good. But remember, we specified unique, maximum length, default values, all of those things. So if any of those are not a match, if any of those conditions fail, then this is going to give us false and the code is not going to run, right? Otherwise it will run. So if everything is good, then we can say serializer.save. This is going to insert the data into our database. Once we insert this, we can return a response saying insertion successful. So here we can specify two things in the response. First, we can specify status and we can, let's say, call it success probably. And then if you want, we can insert one more thing which can be the data. So we can then say that I want to store the data and the data will, or I want to return some data, and that can then probably contain a note that was currently in. So that's again serializer.data, just like before, right? And we can then also specify the status. So status, and this can be again status dot. So there is an HTTP 201 for created. So whenever we insert something new, we go for this particular response. 201. 200 is success, 200 is also okay, but 201 is specific for creation. So we try to be as specific as we can, right, when working with these kind of things, right? So that's the setup. All right, great. Now, so like I said, if there are any mistakes in the serialization, then this will become false. Okay, so Manu, this is how we are checking if everything is good. If anything is not matching the pattern that we have specified, then this will be false and none of this will work. In that case, what we can do is, if it is not true, which means if something is wrong, then we can return the error. So we can then say else, and then we can return response saying failed, and we can then specify, instead of note, we can pass in the messages from the errors. So we can access it like this: serializer dot error messages or serializer dot errors. Okay, and then again this status will be a failure status, so that's going to be 400. So we have something called bad request status 400, right? So this is how we respond with else. So if the data is not matching our constraints, then it will say failed. Okay, perfect. So our post route is now done. Let's restart our server and test it out. So again, I'm going to first cd into the project folder. Then I'm going to start the server. Okay, all good. Let's create a new request. This time it's going to be a post request, but it's the same view. So it's the same endpoint. It's the same endpoint, which is slash API slash notes, but with a different method now. So because we have two methods, right? We have the get method and we have the post method. So both methods, or rather all five methods, can work on the same endpoint, right? So for now, we have defined two. Perfect. So now let's go for post, and let me just put in some error data. Well, let's just try to put some which is going to be false, or it will basically not meet our constraints, right? So let us say that let's just try to put, okay, I'll just try to put a title which is more than 200 characters. I think that's a good constraint that we can try to put. So let me just try to type it in. Okay, I think that should be more than 200. Let's go ahead and try to send it now. And you can see that it immediately gives us the 400 bad request. Okay, because it is now an error. And in the messages, we can see status failed. And then in the message, we can see ensure this field has no more than 200 characters. So this is how we can handle the responses, or, control or indicate the user that something is going wrong. So here again, it says this field is required. So content is missing, which is why the error also shows up. Right, great. Now let us say that I change it to make list, whatever, and I also add my content. So let's add some content to it. Items to buy. Okay, this is my content, and now I can send it. Once we do that, you can see it gets 201 created. So this time everything was valid. So it's saved in the database, and then we are returning the saved value. So what are we returning? We are returning a note. ID is default, status is default, created and updated are default values, right? So we just have to specify title and content. Everything else is default. And then it is created. Now, if we go back to our get route and run it, now we can see we have the make list. It shows up at the top. So it follows the reverse order. First, we had this Chinese item. We had then, first we had cook food, then travel, then teach, and then now we have added this one, make list. Okay. So this is the post route. This is how we can read something from the user and save it into our database. Okay. So far we have done two out of the four operations, that's create and read. You remember our CRUD, right? You remember our CRUD operation, CRUD. So we are done with the first two. We have now seen how to create something by reading it from the user. So this is that code for creation. And we have also seen how to read something from the database and give it back to the user. That's also something that we have already written, which is the get code. Okay. Perfect. So this is what we have done for all nodes in total. Now, let us say that the other two operations, that's updation and deletion, we want to do it on a single node. Okay, we don't want it to be done on every node because obviously we don't want to update all nodes in one go. I might want to update only one node, right? So for this, what we can do is we can create another view. Okay, we can create another view. So CRUD, okay, can anybody tell me in the chat what CRUD means? We've already discussed it 2-3 times before. What does this mean? Can somebody type the full form in the chat? That's right. Create, read, update, and delete, right? So that's what CRUD stands for. C is for create, R is for read. So create, read, update, and delete. These are the four standard database operations that we perform. And again, these are the standard operations for which we create the API endpoints. So that's going to be our CRUD. Perfect. Now I'm going to make another view here and let's call it an individual nodes detail. So this is for one specific node. So we'll see how to update and delete a specific node. Okay. Again, this is going to follow the same pattern. So generics dot generic API view. And we are still working on the same data set with the same serializer. So I'm going to specify that. And now let us go ahead and we can try to first of all fetch an individual note. So let's make a method called get note. And this time I'm going to be working with an extra field that the user will provide, which is which note they want to fetch. So imagine it's an e-commerce website. There are 20 products. You click on a product to go to the product details page. That's exactly what we're doing here. Right? So out of all the 5 notes that we have, for example, we want to get the details for a single note. So what we can do is we can specify the note, we can specify the node's key, the primary key or the ID. So that's PK, right? Remember in the model, we had written this primary key. This is our ID. So basically, if the user provides us this ID that for a particular node, then we will want to fetch only that node. So what we'll do is we'll write a try catch block here. So we'll say try. And what do we want to try? Well, we want to try to return note model dot objects dot get a note where the primary key is equal to the primary key coming from the request. Okay, so it's a little different in terms of syntax. Let me finish it and then I'll walk you through it. And then we can say except return none. So see, what we're trying to do now is we are trying to fetch a single note. Okay? Fetch details about a single note. Now, how do we uniquely identify each node in the model with the primary key, right? So in our case, that's the ID. PK is the short form for primary key. So what we're doing is we are expecting this PK to come from the user. This is a user defined value. We can change it to whatever we want. I mean, you can change it to whatever you want to call it. PK we usually use for primary key, but you can say key, note ID, whatever you want to write. That's up to you, right? But I'm going to go for PK. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to try to find a note with that key. So we are saying return note model dot objects dot get where the primary key is equal to the key coming from the request. If that is good, if a note is found, then it will return the note. Otherwise, if there's an exception, if the note is not found, then we are returning an empty object. We are returning a none, which means the note is not found, right? So this is how we can get an individual note. Now for this, since it's a different view, we have to create another URL, right? We have to create another URL. So we'll go to our URLs. Here we will add one more path. So first let us import our note detail view. And then we can put a comma here and we can specify another path. And in this path, we have to add one more constraint, which is reading the primary key from the user, right? So we can say, for example, like this string PK. So this will indicate the system that the path is going to be slash API slash notes slash the primary key. Okay. And then again, this is going to be note detail dot as view. So this is another syntax that I have added. This is how we can read the parameters coming from the URL. Right? Remember, we see slash product slash one slash product slash two. So that one, two, three, whatever is there, that is read like this. Okay. So again, this name should correspond to the name used here, this one. Right? So if you write, say, note ID here, then you should write note ID here as well. So that's up to you, okay, whatever it is. But I'm going to stick to PK because we are working with primary key. So it's a good practice to call it PK. Done. Now we can go ahead and run this. So since we have made a new model, it makes sense to run migrations once just to see if anything needs changes. So make migrations, no changes detected. So we can run server. So again, whenever you make a new view, make a new model, whatever change you make, it is good practice to check if you need any migrations, right? Great. Now we are back to Thunder client. I'm going to make a new request and I'm going to paste it. The URL is going to be the same, but this time we have to add one more thing to it. So it's not a complete URL just yet for an individual node, right? So I'm going to copy an ID and I will paste that. So this is the new URL. How do I know that? Because I need a primary key. Once I send this, you can see it says method get not allowed. Okay, interesting. Let's check. Oh, yes, this should be get and not get note. Right. So let's restart a server. Done. And let's send it. Oh, yes. Now the problem here is we are not returning a response, right? We are returning this. Instead of this, what we should do is, if you remember in the previous case, what we have done is we have returned a response, right? So we basically have to return the response and not like the whole thing. So what we can do is let's add a logic for that. So let me stop the server for a minute. Okay, and then I'm going to rewrite this with the get call now, right? Now in the get, what we want is we want self request and the PK to be there. And then we want to go ahead and we can say all nodes is equal to collection dot find. So this is, you have to say node is equal to self dot get node. So we are going to use that method here. Okay, so what we are doing is we are saying that this logic that we have written, this is an internal logic just for our functionality. Okay, this is not giving the user access to the API because that can only be done with get, post, put, patch. This is a custom name that we have given, right? So now we can use that to get the note and then respond. So we can say if note equal to none, then we can send a response with a failure message. So return response. And let's say we say the same response that we have sent earlier like this, right? Status failed. So I'm just going to replace it over there. So status failed. And then what we can say is instead of the messages like this, we can directly throw an error. And here we can just write whatever went wrong. So we can say format a message, right? And what is going to be our message? Well, the message is, remove this. The message is that we have to say note with your primary key. So ID PK, which is a primary key, not found, right? So this is how we can go ahead and get this done. So again, let's check the formatting here. We open the bracket, status field. Then this is our message. So we don't need a bracket over there. We need it over here. Uh, There you go, done. Okay, so what we're doing is we are saying if the note is none, when we try this, if we don't find any note, then we are returning an error. We are just saying status failed, note with your ID that you have given is not found. Otherwise, if it is good, if the note is found, then we want to serialize and we want to return that note because here we have not run serialization. So that's our problem. Okay. So first we have to run serializer is equal to self dot serializer class and then note. So we are serializing the note and we can then respond. So again, we can get the success response and just copying it from here. It's the same message, right? But instead of 201, we'll send a different code. We'll just send it like 200 because it's not a post request. It's a normal OK, right? So again, the rest of it will be the same. So we are saying success. The data that you're looking for is the serializer data and the status is 200 OK, which means all good. Now we can run this. So we missed writing this part earlier. Now we can run this. So cd notes, again run server. And this time around, if I do the same request again, we should be able to fetch the note like you can see. So we get data for just that one note because we have the correct ID. If we don't put the correct ID, then it should give us a failure. It says note with ID PK not found. Let's check why that PK is showing up. Okay, the message should be formatted. No worries, we'll check that out. That's fine. So yes, you can see this is our error message when status fails. And then if it is correct, then we get the corresponding note. Now, out of those 4 or 5 notes, whatever ID we enter, right, that particular ID will be used. So like if we want to find a different note, we can go back to all nodes on this path. Let's check this node, which is this ID with travel. So now if I enter that, you can see only the node with that ID shows up. Okay, travel. So this is how we can get individual note. So we have seen how to add a primary key or how to take some input. We call it URL parameters. The technical term for this is URL parameters. So in this example, what we have seen is we have seen how to take these URL parameters from the user and then how can we use them, right? So we have seen that we can add it as a constraint to our method and then we can use it in our logic, right? So I will just check why this is not showing up. Ideally, this should replace it with PK and we should see that on the screen, but it's fine. We'll check that out in a minute. Okay. Now, what I want you to do next is I'm going to basically go ahead and upload this on GitHub now. And I want you to give this a try. Okay, so I'll give you the entire code. I'll give you 5 to 10 minutes. You can just copy paste the code from GitHub into your system and you can just give it a try so that you are able to understand how the entire flow is happening, right? So I'm just going to quickly take 1 minute and upload it and give you the link. So again, I'm not uploading the virtual environment that you will need to create on your own. I'm just uploading the project, which is the notes project. So again, this is going to be in the same repository under session 12. Right? I'm making a new folder with the name session 12. Okay, and we are done. So here is the link. Again, it's the same repository. I'm just pasting the link in the chat. So in case you don't have the repository, you have the link now. I'll also show you where it is in the repository. So if you just open the repository, it's available right here, session 12 notes. So open this up. You will have the entire code. Just put the corresponding code in the corresponding file, or you can download the entire thing by going to code and download zip. So either way, you can check it out. And I just want you to spend a few minutes with this code. So go through every file, go through everything line by line. I'll wait for 5 to 7 minutes. All right. And you can then, go ahead and just go through it. I'm not asking you to make something new. Just go through it and you should be able to, just see uh, if you have any doubts or questions, you can just let me know, right? So yes, I will give you the link. 1 minute. Uh, off. So Manu, I have pasted the link to the Postman API client. You have to just sign up over there and then you should be able to download it. Okay, great. So yes, that's effectively what we have, in this one, right? So I'm going to wait for 5 minutes just for you guys to just go through the code and understand this. Okay, and you should then be we should then be able to move to the next part. So I'm keeping it to Thunder client, and I think I'll change it to the post route. Okay. Uh, and body. So this is where we can enter the title and the content. So I'm leaving it blank for you, but you can try to enter it like so. Okay. So you can go to post, then body, and then you can type the new node data over here. Server is not running, which is why this, but it's fine. So I leave this on the screen, okay, and I'll give you 5 minutes. You can just try this out. Just send a done, understood, ready, whatever it is in the chat, and then we should be able to move to the next part. So the next part is very simple. We have to work on updation and deletion, which is going to be continuation to the code that we have written already, right? So yes, give this a try and let's continue in 5. Right. So in order to practice this, I mean, or try this code out, you have to do a couple of steps like we have done. First is to create a virtual environment, then install Django, create a Django project, then create a Django app. then paste the code in that app, and then you should be able to run this. So I have given you the entire Django project, but yes, I mean, you'll have to have Python installed and the virtual environment created, and then you should be able to run this. Like yesterday, we've also installed two external packages. Number one is UUID, right? And the second one is a REST framework. So to install them, you can go to the particular project folder and then pip install UUID. So this should install UUID. In my case, it's already satisfied. And similarly, pip install something called the Django REST framework. So that's framework like this Django REST framework. Again, in my case, it's already satisfied, but you should install these two external packages because we have used them. So in the views, you can see we are using the REST framework. And then while creating the model, we have used the UUID package. So these are the two additional dependencies that we need for the project, right? So yes, for everybody who's trying it out, let me know once you are able to try this out. Just put a done ready something in the chat so I know you're done. And then we'll move to the updation and deletion. Okay. So in order to use Thunder client, which is a question in the chat, you have to install this extension. Okay. So first you go to the extensions panel, which is this box like structure in the menu. Then look for the extension Thunder client. Okay, so Thunder client, this is the one. Now you can install it from here. So in my case, it's already installed. So just install it. Then once you install it, it will show up at the bottom. This is like a Spark icon that shows up. So you can click on that. And of course, by default, it will not save any of these. So you will see it's something like this where empty. It's an empty thing and it opens up like this, right? So now you have to open a new request and then you can type the URL. So once you start the project, you get that 127.0.0.1 thing, right? You can type that in here, followed by your path. So in my case, it's going to be /API/notes and then send it. Now, of course, our server is not running, but if the server runs, then this is how it works, right? Then you can change it to post, okay, and then send it again for the post route. If you want to send some data, you can then go to body and type the data here in the JSON format. So in JSON, it needs to be in these flower brackets or curly brackets, and then the data should be all string. So like this. This is title, this is content. So it needs to be comma separated string values like this in curly brackets, and then send it. And then the response will show up here on the right. That's effectively everything there is to Thunder client for now. Right. So just create a new request, choose between get and post, type your URL, type the data, and send it. That's it. Okay. Let me also show you the postman part. So I will also have to sign up. I don't have an account on that. But yes, let me just go ahead and sign up. We should be able to use it directly. Just give me a minute. I'll also just sign up and I will share my screen once that is done. So I can show you how it works. Yes, you can see, right? There's a new request button right there. I'm not sure what is confusing. So once you sign up to Postman, you have an option, right? Send an API request. Just click on new request and you should be able to put it over here, right? We should also be able to download it from somewhere because we want to run local requests. So we have to find a download. Yes, there you go. Download desktop app. You can see this in the menu on the left. It's the last option, download desktop app. Just click on that. And then in my case, it's a Mac. So I can click on this one. You can download it for Windows. So that's what you have to do. Your request will not run directly on the website here because our server is local to the system. So please download the desktop app and then you will get a similar interface, pretty similar to what we have in Thunder client, right? So just download that and then you should be good. Um, I'm just looking at that error. Just give me 1 second. Oh, yes. So the problem here is, who is this? This is, I hope you can see my screen. So the problem here is that you have two folders like this. This is wrong. There should only be one level of nesting. So you should have a notes folder and then a single my notes folder. So that's the problem. You cannot have a structure like that. So please move this out one folder, right? So there are two folders. That's your problem. So just try to rearrange the folder structure. There should only be a single folder and then you should be good. I hope that was visible. Not sure if you were able to see it. Let me know in the chat if you saw that error that I just told you about. Abhiram, can you show me your URLs file? The project level URL, this one. Did you change this? So this is for Kanuri Sivasubramanian. The problem in your error is because you have two levels of folder structure, um, like my notes and then my notes again. So you have to rearrange it in order to have a single folder. So if you see my structure, uh, yes, you can see my structure. So here I only have a single level like this, right? My notes. So you have two folders. I think you are confused between the project name and the app name. So my project name is notes and my app name is my notes. I think you have it the other way around. So just change this accordingly. Right. Perfect. So Abhiram, I am not sure. So there are two things. One is your views. So you have to add this view code, of course. The second is the URL. So you have to add this one and you have to connect it to the correct view, right? So you have to connect it to the node detail and not the node view. So they are two different views over here. So these are the only two things. You can just check this and everything should be good. Okay, perfect. So now let's move to the next part and we are now left with two quick things. So updation and deletion. Let me go ahead and quickly explain that now. So yes, updation and deletion. So we are going to go for patch for updation. Okay. And then so define patch for our updation and then delete for delete. So I'll do this very quickly because we will run out of time, I guess. So note again is equal to self dot get note because even if you want to update the note or delete the note, first step is to check if that note is available. So we are checking that with the help of the primary key like this. Then once we find the note, we are then going to perform our logic. So again, if note equal to none, if it's not found, then we do the same thing like before. We just respond with note not found. Okay. Otherwise, if the note is found, okay. So this needs to be in the correct syntax. If the note is found, then we want to serialize it. So serializer, and then again the same setup. So self dot serializer class. The class is note, and then data. This time is going to be request dot data because we want to get the data to update, right? So the difference between put and patch is going to be that put is going to replace the entire data and patch is going to add to it. So if you just want to say modify the status of a node, or if you want to modify two things, maybe you can only provide those two things and it will be patched to the existing node. On the other hand, put would replace everything. So if there are 5 fields in the node and you provide only 2 fields, the other 3 fields will be gone. So it's basically going to delete whatever is there and add your new thing to it. So that's the difference between put and patch, right? Put is going to basically replace the existing data with new one, and patch is going to add on to it, append to it. So that's the difference, right? And then the third parameter is partial true. So this is what we have to specify, which means that even if there is partial data, you should still work. Okay, partial true. And great. So that's it. Now let's quickly move to the next part. Now, if the serializer is valid, so again, the same condition check. If serializer is valid, then we can say serializer dot the validated data, and we have to change it. So first we'll change the updated field to again date time dot now. And for this, we have to import date time from date time. So that's going to be from date time import date time. Okay. And then we can go ahead and quickly. So first, what we are doing is we are updating the note, right? So we are updating the timestamp when the note is getting updated. Then we can just save the data. So serializer dot save, just like we did in the post. And then we can return a response. So return response. And this is going to be a success response. So again, I'll just copy the success response from here and return. Done. Now, in case this fails, then we want to return a failure again. So this time we can return the error bit, which is this one. So we can return response and we can see that the message is this errors. This is what is wrong. That's it. Okay. So this is our patch. Now let's quickly test it. So I'm going to run the server again. And it's already running here. So let's just pip run server. There we go. I will copy this, go to Thunder client. This time we're looking at patching. So I'll change it to patch. Okay. And we need a single node that we can patch. So let's get a node first of all. So I'm going to run the get to get all nodes. Once we get the nodes, I will copy any one ID and let us change the status to true. Okay. So I will paste that over here, change it to patch, go to body, set the data. So status true and send it. Now, as soon as I do this, you can see we get a success message and our status is now true. Okay, if you see the details here, status is now true, We can send whatever we want. Let us say that you want to change the content, to say Python instead of Django. So I'm just changing it to Python and send it again. You can see now the content changes to Python and the status is true. Okay, so this is how we can patch. So basically we are effectively adding on to like replacing existing data, only existing data. In the exact same way, we can also write the logic for deletion as well. So most of the code is still going to be the same. So what we can do is we can just copy paste the whole thing, change it to delete. We still want to get the note. We still want to return the error if the note is not there. Okay. And instead of this entire serialization, all we have to do is we just have to say note dot delete. That's it. And then we can just respond with no content. So here status is going to be success. And then there are no errors. Instead of that, we can just send the status to not no content. So that's HTTP 204, no content. That's it. So get the note. If note is not there, return error, right? Otherwise, delete the note and return deletion. We can also call it deleted, whatever it is. Done. Now, if I run the same thing for delete, so this is not needed. On the same URL, if we run delete now, you can see we get status deleted. Now, if you try to get the same note, it will not show up. You can see note with ID not found. If you try to get all notes, then that note will no longer be available. You can see now that teach note is gone, right? So this is how we can create the 4 API endpoints, right? So we have get, we have seen all of the 4: get, post, patch, and delete. And we have seen all 4 endpoints over here. So this is how we create endpoints in Django. Right? This is how we can create endpoints in Django. Okay, so now let me know if this makes sense. And then what I will do is I will just give you a quick walkthrough of the entire project that we have created. And then that's basically going to be everything in terms of our content discussion. And then we'll move to project creation from the next session. So the next 3 sessions next week are going to be project creation. So there's a difference between put and patch, right? The put method will replace existing data. So for example, if we go for put, let's say that we just want to change the status and we want to make it true. So this is only one field that we are modifying, right? So what happens here is we should be able to modify like this kind of modification where we only want to modify a single field has to be done with patch. In the case of put, if you want to use put, then you have to provide everything again. You have to provide the entire thing along with the modified data or along with the data you want to modify. So it's going to replace the entire row or the entire object, not just a single field. This is what put will do, right? Patch will let you modify single things like one field or 2 fields, whatever you want to modify. So that's custom controlled, and put will basically replace everything. So we have to be very careful between the two. But yes, both of them are updating data. They are not adding new things to it, right? They are either replacing existing things or adding on top of existing things. So yes, that's what we have. Now I will take one quick minute to just modify this code on GitHub to give you the latest code over there. And then I'll just walk you through what we have done in the overall project, right? In the overall code. So just give me 1 minute and we'll take a quick overview of everything we have seen so far. So again, I'm just giving you the app code. I'm not giving you the project code. Right? So that's for, I mean, the project is for you to create. I am just modifying the same session 12 folder with the new, the 2 methods that we have just written, that's patch and delete. Okay, done. So can anybody quickly just confirm this? Just try to open the repository and check if you have access to the code which now contains patch and delete. I'm giving the repository link in the chat. You can just confirm if you have access to the update code now. And I'll also just quickly check, I guess. So my notes. And then views, in views, we should have the patch and delete. Yes, there it is. So I've given you the entire code, right? That we have written so far. And yes, so in the next 10-15 minutes before we wrap up, let me just quickly walk you through what we have done in Django so far. And then we'll go ahead and, we'll create a new project where we'll talk about a couple of things, right? It will be a revision session majorly, but I'll also tell you a couple of quick things like how to authenticate, so how to add login sign up functionality, right? That's one thing that we will discuss. And then we'll discuss some custom logic. So how do you, let's say, fetch books with latest reviews or fetch books with the highest number of ratings, that kind of stuff. So 3-4 things related to that we will discuss. Okay, but yes, so in this case, what we have done is we have created a new Django project, which is called, so first we have created a virtual environment, but then the project is called Notes. Within the Notes, we have a single application that's called My Notes. And this application will basically contain one major sub URL, that's API Notes. So whenever somebody goes to www.yourwebsite.com/API/notes, they will be redirected to the My Notes app. So this is our controller, right? This file here in the main project URLs, this is our controller. So this controller will detect, okay, this is the path that the request has. It will send the control to mynotes.urls. This is going to be the app level controller. Now, once the request comes to this URL, mynotes.urls file, then from here there are two options. So again, this is another controller. If the request does not contain, if the URL does not contain any parameter, it is going to go for all nodes. Otherwise, if the URL contains an ID of the node, then it is going to go for individual node endpoint, right? Now, if it goes to all nodes, then it will go to the corresponding view for node view, where we have only two paths defined. So there is get and post. So then it will check for the corresponding request method. Is it get request or post request? If it is one of the two, it will be able to handle it. Otherwise, it will give an error, right? So if you run a request for which it is not configured, for example, if I just run the server, okay, and I go to the route, okay, and I run a delete request. So this will give a problem. It says method delete not allowed, because we have only written get and post for it. So put, patch, delete, the other methods are not going to work, right? So that's our controller in action. Now, after we have decided everything that we are going to the my nodes, then within that we're going to the all nodes view. Over there we have the get method. Then the rest of the code is going to work. So this is our view code now, right? So the view code is going to then interact with our model, which in turn will interact with the database, and it will get the serialization done and it will return an appropriate response. So this is our MVC, right? The model view controller in action. Okay. Similarly, if it is a post route, then the control will go here. So in the case of get, first we are getting everything from the database, then we are serializing that data and we are sending it back. In the case of post, we are doing the exact opposite. First, we are getting it, like whatever data we want from the request, we are getting that data. Then we are serializing it to make sure it follows all our constraints, all our properties, all the settings that we have done. And then if it is valid, which means if the data follows all the standards and constraints that we have put, that this must be unique, this is the text limit, whatever, then it is going to save to the table. So this dot save is going to insert data into our table, right? Then we are returning a success response. If it is not valid, then we return the appropriate error message in serializer dot errors, like you saw in that title example where I gave you, where we exceeded the 200 character count. So there it shows, that the maximum number of characters allowed are 200, whatever corresponding error message is thrown, right? So that's get and post. Then we created a couple of routes for an individual node. So here what we have done is we have written a custom message right? We have written a custom message. The custom function, rather, the custom function is just trying to get the note. If it is found, we get it. Otherwise, we return none. Okay. So now in the get, what we're doing is we are writing some logic to get that note. If the note is not found, we say not found. Otherwise, we again serialize it and return it on the screen. Then we have patch. Now in patch, we have to do one more step. We have to read the note, we have to read the data from the user, and then we have to add the data to the note. So first we are trying to find the note. If the note is not found, there is no point in continuing. If it is found, then we serialize the data coming from the request. We also serialize the note data so that both of them can be synced. If that is valid, we are updating the updated at field. We are saving the changes. So whatever data comes from the user, that is getting updated, and we are returning a corresponding success. If something goes wrong, we return a failure. In the exact same way, in the case of deletion also, what we are doing is we are basically saying that this get the note. If the note is not found, say note does not exist. If it is found, just delete the note and respond with deleted, right? That's it. So this is our CRUD logic. This is our 4 HTTP methods: get, post, patch, and delete. So most of our work with Django will always involve creating many more of such API endpoints, right? For now, we have just made it for notes, and it's very limited. We can either get all notes or one note, but we can add a lot of functionality to it, right? For example, we can add a search field where we can try to search for a particular note, right? So that should then show up. So again, we just have to create a bunch of other endpoints in a similar way. The only difference would be that we write the logic on our own, just like we have written this get note logic. In a similar way, instead of using primary key, we'll take the search string from the user, we'll try to search for the note, etc., etc., etc. So whatever data comes in the request, we can get access to it, and we can try to utilize it in so many different ways, right? We can then run some additional things on it. For example, also show the count of notes, also show created at, whatever it is, right? So all of that can be done as well, which is what our agenda or our aim is going to be in the next couple of sessions, right? So in the next 3 sessions, that's next week, again, the timings will be sent to you. It will be 5 to 7 mostly on all 3 days. The days will be told to you, but the timings will mostly be 5 to 7, right? So yes, what we'll do there is we'll try to create a project, which is the Goodreads project, a mini version of it. So again, I'll show you how to do authentication, and we'll also see how to create a template for the front end. So those two things are going to be new, but the rest of it is going to be focused on revision of existing topics which we have covered, right? So yes, that's basically everything that we have for the session today. The attendance link has now been shared in the chat. So please make sure you fill that in, okay? Fill the feedback in. And yes, that's basically what we had for the day. So thank you so much, guys, for attending. I hope this makes sense. Again, the repository is already updated, right? The repository is already updated with the code for from today's session. I will also try to update the repository with the recordings as well. So let me do that soon. I'll just do it in the next few minutes so that you have access to that as well. And yes, that's it. That's it for this one. Thank you so much, guys, for attending. Let's connect in the next one and continue from there. Okay. So this error that you're getting is regarding your network issue VV, right? The screenshot, it's clearly mentioned the error is due to network connectivity. So please check. Maybe it's because of your network. So that should be the problem. Just try switching to a Wi-Fi network, or just disconnect your Wi-Fi and reconnect it, something like that, and that should be solved. So there's no problem with the command. The command is fine. Just check your network connection and you should be good. Okay, perfect. So today's topic was creating REST APIs with Django for everybody who's asking. The topic is creating REST APIs with Django. I have put the topic also in the chat. That's the exact topic name for today. And yes, that's it. So I'll see you in the next one. Have a great weekend. Let's connect next week. Bye bye.